Hey everyone, I'm about to start working on a new sewing project, namely a pair of workout leggings. Now, as we all know, before we can actually start sewing the garment, there is a fair bit of prep work required. So I thought it would be fun to show you how I get ready for a new sewing project. So that's what we're going to talk about in today's video. I won't bore you with the cutting part, but after I've cut the fabrics, I like to pin them on my dress dummy to easy access because it does help with the workflow. And also, I've begun marking all the pieces now to keep track of them. We're using regular masking tape after tip I got from you guys in the comment section. Before I start to do anything on the project, I prefer to make a list. And there are several reasons for that. First of all, I'm usually working with my own pattern, so that means I need to write down exactly what I'm supposed to do. But the biggest reason why I like to list things down is that gives me a very clear view of how I need to thread my machines when I'm starting out and then when I need to switch to another stitch. And this actually saves a lot of time because otherwise, if I don't plan this, I might end up having to rethread the machines much more than necessary, which is a big time suck and not really that fun to do. Before I start sewing, I like to have all my machines prepped, threaded and ready to go. On the Coverstitch machine, I always start with the looper thread and then I thread one needle at a time. As you can see, I am using regular thread spools for the needle thread in order to get matching thread. That means I need to use a thread sock to make the winding of the thread easier. And because I'm going to sew with quite a tricky lycra fabric, I am in fact switching to fresh needles, which I now have in my brand new needle storage system. I make sure that they are screwed on tight to avoid skipped stitches. And before I start working on the actual cut out fabric, I always do samples. And this is super crucial when you're working with a Coverstitch machine, especially I would say. So I'm doing a couple of samples here. Now the first one wasn't so good. That means I need to change a lot of the tension settings clearly to get this. So I try to experiment a bit until I find the perfect setting for this particular project. And then I move on to the serger. Again, I start by changing the looper threads and then I move on to the needle thread. I usually tie a knot on the looper thread both when I'm switching thread in the serger and the Coverstitch machine, but when I'm threading the needles I start from scratch. Again, I do have to make samples, I always do, and this time I'm going to start off by using the 3-thread wide overlock stitch. And the first sample, I turned so, definitely some issues here, so I'm going to change the cutting width and the differential feed to get that smooth, nice looking 3-thread overlock. Now I'm happy with how it looks, so it's time to move on to the last step, which is my regular sewing machine. Even though I am actually working with stretchy lycra fabrics, there are always some small things that needs to be sewn with a regular sewing machine. At least I like to have it as a safety measure. Again, I am using a fresh needle since I am working with stretchy lycra fabrics. Not always easy. I love these stretch needles from Smets, and Organ also has a similar type of needle. It's really good if you're having problem with skip stitches on very stretchy lycra fabrics. If I can, I do prefer to start with a fully winded bobbin so I don't have to stop mid through a project and switch the bobbin thread. So if I need to stitch stretchy lycra, I do like to use a regular narrow zigzag stitch. So I'm going to set the machine up for that and do a couple of samples. You definitely need to find that sweet spot when it comes to stitch length and width in order to make sure that the seam is stretchy and doesn't pop. So I usually end up having to do a couple of samples on this stitch as well. So this is how I like to do my preparation for a new sewing project. Now, of course, I'm super curious to know what are your rituals before you start on a new sewing project. Please share in the comment section, and if you haven't already, please hit subscribe for weekly sewing videos. Stitch safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye!